They're devaluing the dollar. They're going to crash that. And already we've seen a lot of countries like China, Iran, Venezuela moving toward alternate currencies. And here we got, that came out of the APF, Tuesday, October 6, 2009, UN calls for a new reserve currency. The United Nations called on for a new global reserve currency to end dollar supremacy, which has allowed the United States the privilege of building a huge trade deficit. I'm all for not being able to have that privilege to create the deficit. But what is this going to do to us here in America and our economy? He said greater use of truly global reserve currency, such as the IMF special drawing rights, enables the seigniorage gained to be deployed for development purposes. For development purposes. You see, they're pushing for the IMF, the World Bank, to be this central bank now. And the Huffington Post, Ellen Brown wrote on October 6, 2009, the IMF catapults from a shunned agency to global central bank. A year ago, nobody wanted to know the International Monetary Fund. And this is where mind control comes into place. This is where the corrupt media comes into place, because they start running their propaganda campaigns to change public opinion from the bad to the good, or from the good to the bad, depending on what benefits the global elites. And this is exactly what we're seeing here. Special drawing rights are a synthetic currency originally created by the IMF to replace gold and silver in large international transactions. But they have been little used until now. Why does the world suddenly need a new global fiat currency and global central bank? That is a really, really good question. Because really that's all we're going to be doing is seeing this on a big level, on a global level now, what we're seeing with the Federal Reserve and the scam that is, where a lot of people don't realize that's a private-owned bank. Private-owned banks, really. And they just create money out of thin air. This is exactly what this IMF is going to be doing with these special drawing rights and stuff. And this leaves the U.S. in a vulnerable position. If we face a war or other global catastrophe, we no longer have the privilege of printing money. We will have to borrow the global reserve currency like everyone else, putting us at the mercy of the global lenders. So if this goes into place, we're not even going to be able to print money out of thin air like we do now with the Federal Reserve, which I don't think is a good idea anyway, but that's still losing some of our sovereignty, because as it stands now, everybody has accepted the Federal Reserve System, and, that's what they consider valid. I think we should end the Fed. I support Ron Paul and H.R. 1207, which would audit the Federal Reserve so that we can see exactly what criminal activities they have been partaking in, and who's responsible, and who's stealing our money. There's trillions of dollars missing that's unaccounted for. And it's just totally a scam, a total Ponzi scheme. And like I said, these criminals need to start getting arrested. Bernanke needs to be jailed. Pelosi needs to be jailed. Cheney needs to be jailed. Obama needs to be jailed. Obama is a treasonous president. And it's really totally ridiculous. Now, the Federal Reserve is kind of worried because, they got a little foothold here on the world economy, because the U.S. dollar is the world reserve currency, and it's the Federal Reserve that's just printing the money out now out of thin air in a fiat system. Now, to avoid not being able to print that money, the Federal Reserve has hinted that it is prepared to raise interest rates, even though that would mean further squeezing the real estate market and the real economy. And what that says to me right now is that they're just going to continue busting it. They don't care. They're going to squeeze every penny they can out of the American people. Every single one. They're going to bust every bubble that they create. Now, to remind you, in the 30s, it was the Federal Reserve that created the Depression, that created the bubble that caused the Depression. You know, these guys do this on purpose over and over again. It's part of their plan of problem, reaction, solution, where they create a problem, they get the reaction from the public, and they offer their solution, which they already wanted to do anyway. And we're seeing more of this develop here. And this article goes on, it talks about the dollar needs to be devalued by half, the IMF's $500 million stimulus package designed to help developing countries or the banks. And the thing is that what they do, this is part of the propaganda. They say, well, this is a good thing. You know, we want to help developing countries. You know, you're not against helping the poor, are you? But if you actually look at what they're doing, they're only benefiting the bankers, you know? And it's really the bankers that are the enemy of the people. It says here, these are loans made by G20 countries through the IMF to poor countries. They have to be repaid, and what they're going to be used to repay is the international banks. The money won't really touch down in the poor countries. It'll go straight through them to repay their creditors. But the poor countries will spend the next 30 years repaying the IMF. And that's kind of what's happened here in this country is through interest rates, it's become impossible for us to pay off our debt. The system is on a downward spiral, and it's just a matter of time before it totally collapses. It's mathematically impossible to sustain this big, huge problem. And that's really what it is. It's a huge problem. Not long ago, the IMF was being called obsolete. Now it's back in business with a vengeance, but it's the old, unseemly business of servicing as a collection agency for the international banking industry. And they also want to set up this for global carbon taxes. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. But this is the system that they created that only benefits them. You understand me? You know, we're talking about elite criminals here, a crime syndicate worldwide, mind you. This is not just a United States problem. This is a world problem. And like I said, we need to start holding people accountable for this. But first, we need to educate our fellow people because they've been dumbed down so badly through the media, through the educational system, through fluoride and mercury in the vaccines, fluoride in the water. It's incredible. You know, mercury is in corn syrup. It's like everywhere you turn, they're trying to do anything they can to affect our brains, to affect our critical thinking. You know, they don't want us to question reality. They want us to accept their reality. And that is just, it's a sin, really. It's an abomination against humankind. I mean, we are in a fight for humanity here. That's exactly what's going on. And then you hear them, Bernanke and all, saying, well, we're out of recession, the economy's getting better. It's, you know, and it's not. It's not at all. They're sitting up there stone cold lying about this stuff. And Peter Schiff wrote this at Lou Rockwell, October 3rd, 2009, the recovery that isn't. And it says market boosters are prattling on about the possibility of a jobless recovery. A jobless recovery? You know? And this is the propaganda that we hear, a jobless recovery. So that when the people realize, you know, they're out of work, it's hard to find a job, the economy's crumbling, wages are down, everything's getting shipped overseas, you know? So they want to create this illusion that, oh, we're in a recovery, but it's a jobless recovery. I don't understand how you can have a jobless recovery anyway. Treasurer Secretary Geithner has been almost giddy in his descriptions of the recovery, all while crediting his own policies for averting disaster. And that's what I'm saying. They pose as the saviors. You see what I'm saying? And I'm gonna continue to point out their ludicrousy. Americans are once again taking the government's bait by spending money that they don't have to buy things that they don't afford. And we've seen this after 9/11. They said, oh, you want to fight terrorism? You want to get back at the people that caused the attacks? Go out and buy stuff. Buy jewelry. Buy houses. You know? Part of that caused the housing bubble. U.S. consumers showed the biggest month-over-month increase in personal spending in 10 years. I mean, that's what I'm saying. We have to educate our fellow man. They're being pulled in hook, line, and sinker by this propaganda. It's incredible. Even Gore Vidal, he came out at the Times Online, this was reported. We will have a dictatorship soon in the U.S. And, you know, that's exactly what this is. It's a scientific dictatorship. These guys are madmen, and they're going to stop at nothing until they destroy the United States and our way of life, okay?